In this video, we will explore what happens if a Danish private limited company, an ApS, refuses to enter into a collective agreement and why this decision can have far-reaching legal, commercial, and reputational implications in Denmark's highly organized labor market. To set the scene, it is important to recognize that Denmark does not rely primarily on statutory minimum wages or broad labor codes. Instead, the Danish model is built on collective bargaining between employer organizations and trade unions. Collective agreements regulate wages, working hours, pensions, overtime, holiday conditions, and a range of employee protections. Many ApS companies, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, may initially assume that avoiding collective agreements gives them maximum flexibility. However, in Denmark, refusing a collective agreement is not a neutral choice. It changes how the company is perceived by unions, employees, and key stakeholders, and it exposes the organization to specific forms of pressure within a well-established legal framework. From a legal standpoint, an ApS is not forced by law to sign a collective agreement, but unions have a right to use what is known as a conflict to push for one. This can include strikes, picketing, and sympathy actions from other workers and companies within the same union family or employer network. If an ApS refuses a collective agreement during negotiations with a union that is considered representative for the industry, that union can initiate a conflict to pressure the company. These conflicts are lawful when carried out under the rules established in the Danish labor market system, and they can be surprisingly far-reaching. For example, suppliers, subcontractors, or transport providers might come under pressure from their own unions not to cooperate with the company in conflict, creating a practical and commercial deadlock. In practice, a small ApS that depends on logistics partners, industrial services, or subcontractors may find daily operations seriously disrupted even if their own employees are not initially on strike. In addition to conflict measures, refusing a collective agreement can affect recruitment and retention. Skilled workers in Denmark often expect some form of collective coverage or, at a minimum, working conditions at or above the levels typically set by agreements. If your ApS chooses to stay outside of collective agreements, you may find that experienced candidates are hesitant to join, particularly in sectors like construction, manufacturing, transport, cleaning, and parts of the service industry where agreements are the norm. Over time, this can limit your talent pool, increase turnover, and force you to offer equivalent or better terms anyway, but without the predictability and structure that a formal agreement provides. On the commercial side, many larger Danish and international customers, as well as public sector contracting authorities, look closely at labor standards in their supply chain. When bidding for contracts, especially in public tenders or ESG-sensitive sectors, companies are frequently asked to document that they comply with prevailing collective conditions or equivalent standards. An ApS that has openly refused a collective agreement and is under active union conflict may find itself excluded from certain tenders or flagged as a compliance risk. This can be especially damaging if your growth strategy depends on partnering with corporates that apply strict CSR, human rights, and labor due diligence guidelines. Another risk to consider is reputational. Danish media and civil society are generally attentive to disputes where unions allege underpayment or undermine working conditions relative to the collective norm. An ApS that positions itself outside this framework may be portrayed as seeking unfair cost advantages at the expense of employees. Even if the company believes it offers decent conditions, the lack of a recognized collective reference point can make it harder to demonstrate that it operates responsibly, especially when challenged by a union that has deep institutional experience and public credibility. From an internal governance angle, refusing a collective agreement also shifts more responsibility for HR policy onto the ApS itself. Without an agreement, management must design and maintain its own policies for pay structures, overtime rules, termination processes, dispute resolution, and working environment practices. While this can feel flexible, It also raises the risk of inconsistencies, misunderstandings, or ad hoc decisions that may trigger individual disputes, claims of discrimination, or negative employee relations. Collective agreements, by contrast, provide a tested framework that can reduce ambiguity and offer predictable processes when conflicts arise, for example through agreed grievance procedures and industrial arbitration. It is worth noting that many ApS companies mitigate these pressures by joining an employer organization that negotiates collective agreements on their behalf at sector level. This provides access to standardized agreements, professional labor law support, and a coordinated position in negotiations. For an ApS that refuses both membership in an employer organization and direct collective agreements, the company stands more alone, both in defending its position and in managing any ensuing conflicts. So what are the practical options if your ApS is considering refusing a collective agreement or is currently in a dispute with a union? First, it is critical to conduct a structured risk assessment that goes beyond immediate payroll costs. This should include mapping your exposure to unionized suppliers, critical subcontractors, and logistics partners, evaluating your dependence on public tenders or large corporate customers with ESG requirements, and assessing the expectations of your existing workforce and future recruits. Second, you should quantify the potential commercial impact of a conflict scenario, including operational delays, reduced capacity, and the cost of reputational damage, not just the wage differentials between collective and non-collective conditions. Third, it is advisable to seek specialist legal and HR advice familiar with the Danish model before taking a firm stance. Often, there are tailored solutions within existing agreements, such as flexible local arrangements that maintain competitiveness while still providing the institutional benefits of collective coverage. In some cases, a company can negotiate specific terms or leverage sector-level agreements that fit its operational profile. Ultimately, a categorical refusal of a collective agreement by an ApS in Denmark should be seen as a strategic decision with system-wide consequences, not a narrow HR or cost-saving choice. While remaining outside the agreement framework is legally possible, the Danish model is designed to make that position both visible and contestable through legitimate union action and commercial pressure. For many companies, especially those seeking long-term growth, stable access to skilled labor, and strong relationships with key stakeholders, engaging constructively with collective bargaining is less about surrendering control and more about integrating into a well-functioning institutional infrastructure. As you reflect on your company's approach, the key is to adopt a long-term, holistic perspective that weighs not only direct labor costs, but also resilience, reputation, and the capacity to operate smoothly within Denmark's highly coordinated labor market.